You the first of hopefully many of these little uh, videos, I suppose. These videos are basically my thoughts on my personal standings in terms of politics. I don't. If you're going to ask me why exactly are you doing this, I guess just because YouTube is a great way for individuals to shout out to the world and let them know where they stand on certain topics. That's pretty much my only explanation. Um, and you could take it as you will. So my personal standing, I think I end up in the center left ultimately. Although I think I'm pulling more towards just pure centrist. And the irony is that it's not that I am centrist in all things. Like I think there's a middle. Like I actually am far left on certain things and far right on certain other things. And the sum total, when you add it all up, is that I just end up somewhere in the middle. So on any given issue, I'm not centrist. I'm just centrist if you add up all the things and you total it up. You realize that the negative and the positives, they all add up together to make a sum total of basically zero. So let's start with the liberal stuff. So where am I liberal leaning? Where am I left leaning? Well, I'm pretty hard left on social issues. So I don't believe that gays should be persecuted. I don't believe I know that some people think that that is something that should be done under the guise of religious freedom. I may as well talk about my own religious beliefs. I am what you would call a deist. I am not a Christian, but I do believe in a God that created the universe. I just don't think that he interacts with the world anymore. Uh, you might say, well, that's a really, unhappy. Like a lot of people say, well, that doesn't, that's not very comforting, right? Like my God answers my prayers, and He's listening all the time, and He's always there. That's what gives me great comfort. Your God, if the God that you claim to believe in, that God may as well not be there because He doesn't interact with the world. And like, what's the point of praying to that God if He ain't gonna listen to you? How much like that doesn't seem very comforting at all. Why bother even praying? In fact, why bother believing in him at all if he's not going to help you out in any way, shape, or form? And the answer is, I'm a scientist that I believe the evidence, right? Doesn't matter whether he helps me out or not. I think there's enough evidence to show that he exists. Whether or not he chooses to interfere in my life is up to him. I'm going to guess that I'm far from being important enough for a being that is powerful enough to create the universe. The life of one single human being is beyond insignificant. He doesn't give. He doesn't even. I'm willing to bet he doesn't even know I exist. If he does, he doesn't care, and I don't blame him for it. Like for something that powerful, the life of a single human is, like I said, beyond irrelevant. Like irrelevant isn't even a strong enough word to describe how insignificant I am in the grand scheme of things. So I don't blame him for not paying attention to me. But I will still pray because it's more like, why is it that we give thanks every Thanksgiving? Who are we giving thanks to? The pilgrims? They're dead. They've been dead for hundreds of years. They're beyond caring about whether or not you thank them, but we thank them anyway. And it's right that we should do so. Because even though they're dead, it still has value to thank them. So even though God doesn't hear my prayers, or at least I don't expect that he does, I'll pray to him anyway because I'm giving thanks for making all of this possible. It was him who sparked the universe and made all this possible, and that is worthy of praise and worthy of thanks, regardless of whether or not he hears it. So that is where I stand religiously. And I suppose you could say that I'm one of those spiritual but not religious kind of people. Like I don't belong to any church. My prayers are my own. I don't need anybody else to tell me how to pray or where to pray or when to pray. I do it on my own time when I feel like it. I don't see the need to follow man-made rules. My Bible is the universe. It's not some book written 2,000 years ago by human beings. It's everything from the grass to the trees to the sky to the moon. It's all of this is my Bible. This is my proof that God exists. And it's the reason that I pray. But I mean, I will never force this on anybody else. You believe what you want. But B, my version of God has never given me any commandments. In fact, he didn't even command me to pray. Like I said, my prayer is all about giving thanks. My personal belief is that he probably doesn't even hear them, or if he does, he doesn't care. But that doesn't change the fact that he is still responsible for everything that I own, see, and do. So, that's worthy of praise, regardless of whether or not he's listening. That is my belief system. And because of this, because I don't follow any actual religion, there's no holy book. And in fact, my opinion on the Bible is it's a good book, got a lot of nice moral lessons in there. I don't think it's the divine word of God, though. So for this reason, I don't accept any religious explanation for why gays are bad, right? There's like, it's a sin. It's in the Bible. I'm like, well, I'm a deist, not a Christian. So to me, the Bible, like, you as a Christian should not be able to cherry pick because you're a Christian. You're supposed to believe all of that. As a deist, I don't have to believe all of it. I can choose to cherry pick. So that's exactly what I do. I get to cherry pick. You don't. So I get to cherry pick what I want out of the Bible, and everything else I can discard because I don't see it as the divine word of God. If you do, you have to take every word as gospel. If you don't, you can take whatever it is you want out of it, and the rest you can just get rid of. Right? So I choose to just discard the parts about gays being bad. I'm like, whatever. I'm not a Christian, so I don't have to take all of it. So personally, I suppose you could say I'm pretty hard left on the LGBT rights, stuff. I'm like, listen, they're human beings, and they deserve every right of all human beings. So certainly they shouldn't be persecuted. They should be able to take advantage of whatever, opportunities exist for everybody else. As a minority myself, I certainly understand what it's like to sometimes be undermined or I suppose like marginalized because of your race. So I understand why, people in the LGBT community might feel that, the sting of that. So I'm like, okay, certainly if you want to call that position far left, guilty as charged. I suppose I am far left on that particular social issue. Other things I guess I'm far left on are, I suppose education. I believe that, government has never been very efficient on anything. If you've ever walked into a Department of Motor Vehicles, you know exactly how efficient government is, because that's a government-run operation. And I've never, ever seen a DMV efficiently run. And please let me know if your local DMV is an efficiently run, smoothly oiled machine, because I'm willing to bet it isn't. If you let the government run anything, you get the DMV. That's what you get. That is government efficiency for you. That's as efficient as it's ever going to get. But the one good thing about government-run programs is that they are universal. Kind of by definition, they'd have to be universal, right? So the DMV may not be an efficient operation, but it does mean that anybody with a car can go to a DMV and get a license, right? It's not if you can afford to pay like whatever. Like there's some things that are like, for example, iPhones, right? Anyone with the money can buy an iPhone, but if you don't have the money, it's far from universal, right? I suppose you could say the same thing about healthcare. So the good thing about the government is that they can make it universal. Paid for by taxes, it's free to go in, free to get the stuff you need to get. So why would you want the government in charge of something? You would want the government in charge of something if the thing that you're talking about is so crucial, so important, that everyone in the country has access to it, that you're willing to give up efficiency to get it. Oftentimes this is public goods. Like, right? For example, defense. There's a reason that the government is in charge of the military. Now, we could make the military 10 times more efficient by privatizing it. But except for like seriously hard right libertarians, I've not heard any single actual legitimate right-wing person suggest that we should privatize the military. Because even right-wingers know that's a terrible idea. There are things you should privatize. The military is not one of them. Doing that would just I don't think I can even iterate the number of things wrong with such an idea. But yes, if you're asking, would that make the military turn a profit? Absolutely. Yes. If we basically disbanded the United States military and outsourced all of our national defense to private military corporations, the efficiency of the corporations would go up by a lot, and they would start turning a profit. Problem is, they would also be very bad at their jobs, because privatization of the military means that only those who could pay will be protected by the military. If ISIS were to ever attack us and your town just happened to not pay the PMC enough, the soldiers might not show up to defend your city. That's bad, because the United States military is supposed to defend the entire country, not just the parts of the country that can pay, right? So the fact of the matter is military defense has to be universal by definition. And so therefore the government has to be the one in charge, because they're the only ones who can guarantee that it is going to be universal. So anything that we think should be universal must by definition be handled by the military. By the government, right? By definition, anything we deem needs to be universal. You know, for example, like the military is a great example because we all agree that should be universal. But for example, the DMV, we think that cars, and the handling of this stuff should be universal. Everyone with a car should be able to just go to the DMV. They shouldn't have to, it's like, oh, well, if you can afford, no, we think everyone should. So the government handles it, right? I think that education is too important to leave in the hands of the private sector. Like I said, the private sector, there's an old saying about universal, cheap, and good. Pick two, right? I would say that we should be willing to bite the bullet and make education universal and good at the cost of it being horribly expensive, because it's worth it. Education is probably the single most important thing in the world. It is, the kids that are being educated today will be our future leaders tomorrow. And if we don't educate them right today, they will not be able to make it we will have a very, very bleak future to look forward to. We play the stock market. We don't invest in the stock market. That's a non sequitur. That doesn't make sense. We play the stock market. It's gambling. You might as well go to Vegas and put $20,000 on red. It's literally gambling. But we invest in our future. The word invest is very important. Invest implies that we feel that whatever we're investing in is guaranteed to grow, right? That it's not it may not grow at a pace that we're happy with. The reason we play the stock market is that the highs are high, the lows may be low, but the highs are really high, right? So if you're lucky, you just managed to hit the high, bam, you just made $1 million in 2 weeks. If you invest in, for example, money bonds, you'll get in 2 weeks less than 3 cents. But over the course of 30 years, this is the reason you don't put your retirement in a stock, or at least not all of it in a stock, because you want it to grow over time. Over 30 years, if you put it in a stock, you may lose everything. You put it in money bonds, it may grow very slowly, but it will always grow. Over 30 years, you'll have $3 million, more than enough to retire on. That's the point I'm trying to make here, right? It is absolutely crucial that you understand this very important point, right? Investing in our future. Keyword here, investing. And we have to invest in our future. And there's no way to invest better in our future than investing in education. Now you might say, well, private education, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, private sector is great at certain things. They're certainly very efficient. The one thing private sector could never achieve is guaranteed universality. They can't guarantee that. They can't guarantee that anyone who wants an education can get one. They can't guarantee that, right? Public schools are crucial because it guarantees that anyone who wants an education can get one regardless of circumstance, regardless if you're rich or poor, regardless if you have $1 million or $1 to your name, you can always get an education. That's so important. It's so crucial to our future that I don't understand why anyone, Democrat or Republican, left or right, could disagree with me on this. Like I said, the main issue here is universality, right? The main issue here is that it feels like Betsy DeVos and all these people on the right really want to get rid of all the public schools and have nothing but charter schools and private schools. The problem with those schools is they're private. They're charter. In other words, they're schools that are based only for the rich. Poor people can never go to school. You do this, you continue down this path, you're basically making it so that only the wealthy will ever get schooling. Only the wealthy will ever get an education. Anyone who makes less than $50,000 a year just simply will never be able to get educated. And neither will their children. And we will have a permanent underclass. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. At least not to me. So if you want to call this a hard left stance, that I believe education should and must always be universal, look, you can have private schools on top of public schools. We already have that. But you must not get rid of public schools. That is a terrible idea and one of the worst ideas I've ever heard come out of Betsy DeVos's mouth. This is why I hate her so much. And why I hate Trump, because he appointed her. Good Lord. So no, I don't agree with that at all. And I think anyone, like, even the rednecks down there, people who live in the deep south, do you honestly, seriously, you guys actually, you have kids. Do you want your kids to go to college? I assume you do, unless you don't. Like, you're just like, all right, we don't want those hoity-toity college kids. Just work with your hands. Like, seriously? Seriously? If the culture has gone so bad in the South that they've turned against education, then I think that all hope is lost for the Southern United States. If you actually hate education, I don't even know what to say at that point. So, okay.